To grasp what happened to George Pell, the central role of the media and the failings of the Victorian law enforcement and judicial system, we've got to look at history and context. It all arose at a time of understandable public anger and outrage about child sexual abuse in the Catholic Church, exposed in trials and inquiries. Not only the despicable actions of offending priests, but also how the Church sometimes covered for them, moved them on and exposed more children to risk. Despite real and justified anger, of course each case must stand or fall on its merits. And it was always curious that the allegations against Pell went as far as they did. The Victorian Office of Public Prosecutions demands matters only go to trial if there's a reasonable prospect of conviction. And it says a decision whether to prosecute must not be influenced by political pressure or interference or race, religion, sex, national origin, political associations, activities or beliefs of the offender. That's a given. Criminal prosecution must never happen to appease a mob sentiment. Yet before the case got to the prosecutors, the role of the police was peculiar. They started investigating Pell, even advertising for complainants from his cathedral before they'd satisfied themselves about a single complaint. They brought 26 charges. Of those, 5 were upheld, and then only after a second trial, when a jury couldn't decide in the first trial. Now the verdict in the second trial has been quashed 7-0 by the High Court. That's 0 convictions from 26 charges. The claims of an impulsive, opportunistic sexual assault in a busy cathedral were always far-fetched, and the High Court said a jury should have had its doubts. Pell, as a staunch Conservative, had long attracted the enmity of progressive media. When he became the face of the Catholic Church, dealing publicly with its handling of sexual abuse claims, it was open season.
I'm kicking back, thinking of you.
Tim Minchin's latest song begins innocently enough.
I hear that you've been poorly. I am sorry that you're feeling blue.
The Australian entertainer has long been a critic of the Catholic Church over the historical abuse of children and the subsequent failures to hold priests to account. But his latest song is aimed squarely at Cardinal George Pell.
So we think you should come home, Cardinal Pell, come.
For much of the media, Pell was the personification of the failings of his church.
Yeah, I think we can focus until the cows come home on the exact qualities or problems with Archbishop Pell. I think more relevant is that he is part of an institution which systematically protects child rapists and has a long history of doing so. I've interviewed...
By this stage, ABC investigative journalist Louise Milligan was deeply enmeshed in the story of what Pell knew and when.
Cardinal Pell's inquisitor was the Victorian Inquiry's Deputy Chair, Frank Maguire, and he believes the Cardinal has a lot to answer to.
Cardinal Pell may have misled the Victorian Parliament in his testimony or downplayed his knowledge.
I mean, is there any alternative explanation?
In 2016, in a highly unusual move, Victoria Police confirmed they were investigating allegations against Pell.
Victoria's Police Commissioner recently confirmed his task force, SANO, is investigating George Pell over multiple allegations. We can reveal that investigation has been going for more than a year. It involves a number of complainants spanning decades. 7:30 understands that file has been sent to the Office of Public Prosecutions for advice.
Later that year, the police flew to Rome.
Victorian police have confirmed they've flown to Rome to interview the Cardinal over child sex abuse allegations. In July, 7:30 reporter Louise Milligan revealed the allegations against Cardinal Pell. She joins me from Melbourne now. Louise, what can you tell us about this development today?
Well, Lee, it's certainly a major development and it's been a long time coming.
Long time coming? Well, the allegations were historical, but at this stage they weren't even the subject of a charge. And of course they were emphatically denied. The ABC was exceptionally well informed.
Cardinal George Pell seems to be accusing the police of conspiring with the ABC to pervert the course of justice by leaking material on accusations against him. What's your response to that?
Oh, my response to that is that we haven't provided the ABC with materials. Anyone who saw that show last night on the ABC, which I did look at, it's clear it's the source of that information is from the victims.
Still, years later, when Pell was found guilty, some ABC commentators even seemed to begrudge Pell his defence.
How much did his defence cost?
I have no idea.
Who paid for it?
Certainly not the Archdiocese of Melbourne, as far as I know, not any other church body. I think it was individuals. I don't know personally, though.
It must have cost an absolute fortune, a vast sum. There was a contested committal, a first trial that was with a hung jury, and then a retrial, preparation for a separate second set of charges, and now there are two teams of QCs, juniors and all the rest of it simultaneously approaching the sentencing hearing in the County Court and the Court of Appeal request for appeal bail.
And anyone who had been so much as a character witness was demonised.
What I found amazing was, have we ever before seen two former Prime Ministers effectively support a convicted pedophile before? I mean, that's what happened this week. John Howard and Tony Abbott both basically backed Pell, and I found that quite extraordinary.
And last year, when the Victorian Court of Appeal upheld the jury verdict, ABC commentators claimed this was the end of the matter.
The reality, though there are still a lot of commentators around today saying somehow it all remains an open question because it wasn't a unanimous Court of Appeal, the reality is that George Pell is now a convicted child abuser, and he has been convicted in the ordinary way by a unanimous jury upheld by a majority Court of Appeal. It's final.
Of course, it was anything but final. But when the High Court agreed to hear Pell's appeal, this is how the ABC reported it.
But now 78-year-old Cardinal Pell has one last chance to clear his name. A decision that has left the father of one of his victims gutted.
He was really hopeful that this would be over for him today, because as the process goes on and has gone on for some time, it is extremely re-traumatising for him. It remains very raw.
The matter will go before a full bench of the High Court next year, but this latest appeal delays the release of any findings by the Child Abuse Royal Commission involving Pell, what he knew and what he did about widespread clerical abuse in Victoria.
And earlier this month, the week before the High Court was due to hand down its judgment, the ABC presented the final part of Revelation, a series about sex offences committed by Catholic clergy. And this episode focused on allegations against Pell.
So I'm washing myself and he came into my cubicle and he says, I don't think you're washing yourself properly, Bernard. Well, why's that, Father? You need to do this, and lathered his hands and...
But this wasn't new. These claims had either not been proceeded with by the public prosecutor or had been dropped. The ABC has now removed this episode from its platform. And what about its reaction when Pell was ultimately acquitted?
A lot of people have suggested there might be a loss of faith in the legal system over this.
So much for a 79-year-old man who's not only been wrongly vilified but also unjustly convicted and incarcerated. The ABC did air a statement from Pell which goes to the heart of the matter.
However, my trial was not a referendum on the Catholic Church, nor a referendum on how church authorities in Australia dealt with the crime of pedophilia in the church. The point was whether I had committed these awful crimes, and I did not.
It's worth listening also to this excerpt from the ABC Four Corners episode, Guilty, the Conviction of Cardinal Pell, from March last year.
I was devastated. Cardinal George Pell has always been such a personification of the Church in the public life of Australia, and to get to a point where he's convicted for these sorts of crimes, in a sense, is a conviction more broadly about the Catholic Church. It's culture that has led to this.
That indeed was the conflation staring the media and the ABC in the face all along. It was evident in the justifiable public anger about child sexual abuse, but also in the demands for a scapegoat, the timing of the allegations and the way they were investigated, reported and prosecuted. It was classic trial by media, and the High Court has overturned it by calmly and rationally focusing on objective facts.